The Book of Enoch is not part of the Bible that most people know today. It's an ancient text that was probably written sometime between the 3rd and 1st centuries before Christ. It was lost for a long time until it was rediscovered in Ethiopia in the 18th century. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church still considers this book sacred, but for Catholicism and Protestantism it's apocryphal, meaning it has no official religious authority. Even so, the Book of Enoch profoundly influenced religious thought and the way many people understand the origin of evil in the world. And when you read what this text says about the giants that inhabited the earth, it becomes clear why it had such an impact and why it was deliberately left out of the official Bible. The story begins with a group of angels called the Watchers. These Watchers had a specific function, which was to observe humanity and make sure everything went well in creation. But 200 of these angels, led by one called Azazel, made a decision that would change everything. They descended from heaven and went to Mount Hermon, which is located in the region between Lebanon and Syria, and there they made a pact. The agreement was simple and at the same time terrible. They would descend to earth and unite with human women. The text makes it clear that these angels knew they were doing something forbidden, so much so that Azazel was afraid of being the only one to make this mistake and convinced the others to swear that they would all do it together, so that none of them could back out or blame just one. This part of the story already shows something important about human behavior that we still see today. When a group of people decides to do something they know is wrong, they create a pact of silence or complicity. It's exactly what happens in groups that commit crimes together, in gangs and corruption schemes, or even in smaller situations like groups of friends who hide a lie. The logic is always the same. If everyone is wrong together, no one can be punished alone. Azazel's fear was not just a divine punishment. It was a fear of being abandoned by the others, of carrying the weight of guilt alone. This fear of isolation, of being the only one responsible, is what makes ordinary people participate in horrible things as a group. The Watchers descended and chose human women. The Book of Enoch doesn't romanticize this. It wasn't love. It wasn't spiritual connection. It was pure and simple desire. These angels saw that the women were beautiful and took them as wives, generating children. And here arises the central problem of the entire narrative. These children were not normal humans. They were the Nephilim, the giants. The text describes that these beings were born enormous, with 3,000 cubits in height, which would be something around more than 400 meters if we take the literal measure, although many scholars believe this is a way of saying they were absurdly large. Not necessarily that they were exactly that tall. The size of these giants was not the only problem. The Book of Enoch makes it clear that they had an insatiable hunger. They ate everything that humanity produced. They devoured all the food, all the animals, all the agricultural production. And when natural resources ran out, the giants began to devour human beings themselves. They drank blood, killed without any sense of limit or mercy. The description the text gives is of creatures that could not be satisfied. No matter how much they ate, they always wanted more. And this created a situation of absolute terror on earth. Humanity began to cry out to the heavens because it was being consumed, literally and figuratively, by these creatures. Now think about what this means when we take it out of the context of literal giants and look at human behavior. This idea of insatiable consumption, of never being satisfied, of always wanting more even when you already have too much. Isn't that exactly what defines modern society? We live in a time where people accumulate things they will never use, buy clothes they will never wear, consume content compulsively without stopping to process anything. The logic of the giant in the Book of Enoch is the same logic of capitalism without limits, of empty consumerism, of the search for pleasure that never completes itself. You eat and already want to eat again. You buy and already want to buy again. You watch a video and already move to the next one without even remembering what you saw in the previous one. But the story doesn't stop there. In addition to generating the giants, the Watchers did something even worse according to the text. They taught forbidden knowledge to humanity. Each of these angels taught a different type of knowledge. An angel named Azazel taught men to make weapons, swords, shields, armor, and taught women to use makeup, jewelry, and the art of seduction. Another angel taught spells and the cutting of roots to make poisons. Another taught astrology and how to read the signs of the stars. Another taught meteorology, At first glance, some of this knowledge seems harmless or even useful. What's wrong with knowing about the stars or about the weather? The problem, according to the Book of Enoch, was not the knowledge itself, but the timing and intention. Humanity was not ready to have access to these things. Knowledge of weapons allowed wars on a scale that didn't exist before. Knowledge of seduction and manipulation created power structures based on lies and appearances. Knowledge of the stars made people believe that destiny was written and that they had no responsibility over their own choices. Each piece of knowledge that the Watchers gave was used to destroy, control, or deceive. And here is another direct parallel with today. Think about technology. There is nothing wrong with a cell phone, the internet, or social media in themselves. But when you put these tools in the hands of society that doesn't know how to deal with them, the result is chaos. Social media created a generation of people addicted to external approval, who measure their own value by the number of likes. The internet gave unlimited access to information, but also gave equal voice to lies and truths, creating an environment where no one knows what to believe anymore. The weapons that Azazel taught are today the algorithms that know exactly how to capture your attention and make you scroll for hours without noticing. Going back to the text, the situation on Earth reached a critical point. Humans were being devoured by the giants. Violence had spread everywhere, and forbidden knowledge was being used to cause even more destruction. For archangels Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel went to God and reported what was happening. The Book of Enoch describes that God was furious not only with the Watchers, but with what creation had become. The decision was clear. The giants would be destroyed, the Watchers would be punished, and the earth would be purified. The punishment for the Watchers was specific and cruel. They were chained and imprisoned in dark places of the earth, where they would remain until the day of final judgment. Azazel, who had taught how to make weapons and makeup, was tied hand and foot and thrown into a desert, covered with sharp stones, where he would remain in total darkness, waiting for eternal fire. The other leaders of the Watchers had similar punishments. But the most interesting is the fate of the giants. God ordered them to be killed, but since they were part angel and part human, their souls could not simply disappear. When the giants died, their souls became evil spirits that wander the earth, causing problems for humanity to this day. This idea of the spirits of the giants wandering the earth is important because it explains, in the view of the Book of Enoch, where evil that has no physical body comes from. It is these spirits that tempt people, that cause diseases, that generate conflicts. They cannot be killed because they are already dead. They cannot be imprisoned because they have no body. All they can do is influence, whisper, push people in bad directions. And they do this because they are trapped here, unable to return to heaven or rest in death. Now, take this out of the literal and think about the symbolic. How many times do you feel an internal pressure to do something you know you shouldn't? How many times do you act on impulse and then wonder why you did that? The religious explanation would say it's the spirits of the giants influencing you. The psychological explanation would say it's your primitive instincts, your compulsions, your unresolved traumas. In the end, the result is the same. You fight against forces within you that seem to want to destroy you. Noah's flood, which appears in the Bible, is mentioned in the Book of Enoch as God's final solution to cleanse the earth of all this corruption. But before the flood happened, God warned Noah through the angels about what was coming. And here the Book of Enoch gives a detail that the Bible doesn't give so clearly. The flood was not just about punishing human wickedness. It was about physically eliminating the giants and all the corrupted lineage they had created. The water covered everything, killed all the giants. But as the text had already explained, their souls continued to exist. One of the questions that many people raise is, why was this book left out of the Bible? The official answer from the churches is that the text did not pass the canonization criteria, that it was written too late, that it did not have apostolic authority. But if you read the Book of Enoch, it becomes obvious that there's a deeper reason. This text gives a very specific and very disturbing explanation about the origin of evil. It says that evil did not come only from a human choice to disobey God, as the story of Adam and Eve suggests. Evil came from angels who disobeyed, who mixed with humans, and who taught things that should not be taught. This places enormous responsibility on the spiritual world and takes away some of the exclusive blame from humans. If you accept the narrative of the Book of Enoch, then you have to accept that a significant part of the evil in the world is not your fault. You were influenced, deceived, corrupted by external forces that acted before you were born. This may seem liberating, but for a religious institution that needs to keep people feeling guilty for their own sins, so they seek salvation, this narrative is dangerous. It is much easier to control people who believe that all the evil they do comes from themselves than people who can point to fallen angels and say the fault is theirs. Furthermore, the Book of Enoch gives names and specific details about these fallen angels. It lists who taught what, who was the leader, what was the punishment of each one. This level of detail opens space for interpretations and for questions that the institutional church did not want to deal with. It is safer to keep the narrative simple. Satan fell, tempted humanity, and therefore we are all sinners. And no need to talk about 200 angels who made a pact on Mount Hermon. No need to explain how giants 400 meters tall fit on earth. No need to deal with the idea that evil spirits wander around to this day. But the Book of Enoch survived precisely because many people, throughout history, found that it explained things that the official Bible left unanswered. Where did the giants briefly mentioned in Genesis come from? Why did God decide to destroy all of humanity at once? What were the sons of God doing with the daughters of men? Enoch answers all of this in graphic and disturbing detail. Think now about real life, about your daily routine. You wake up, grab your phone, and immediately start consuming information. News, videos, messages, social media. You didn't ask for all this knowledge, but it's there, available, infinite. And just as the Watchers gave knowledge to humanity before it was ready, the internet gave unlimited access to everything before we had the wisdom to process it. A 10-year-old child today can watch videos about how to make bombs, about conspiracies that destroy trust in institutions, about explicit sexual content that completely distorts their view of relationships. This early knowledge does not liberate. It imprisons in patterns of destructive thought and behavior. The giants that devoured everything and were never satisfied are the large corporations of today that accumulate trillions but continue cutting costs, exploiting workers, destroying the environment to grow 1% more. They are the people who have 10 houses but continue speculating in the real estate market while other families cannot afford rent. It's the influencer who already has millions of followers but needs more, always more, because the number is never enough to fill the internal void. And the spirits of the giants, those that wander influencing humanity, are the toxic thought patterns that pass from generation to generation. They are the limiting beliefs that your parents pass to you unintentionally, that their parents passed them, that came from an entire society built on fear and control. You may not even believe in little demons, but do you believe there's a voice in your head that sabotages you? That tells you that you are not good enough? That pushes you toward addictions and compulsions? This voice may not be a spirit of a dead giant, but the effect is the same. The Book of Enoch ends with a promise that one day there will be a final judgment where everything will be resolved. The Watchers will be thrown into eternal fire. The spirits of the giants will be eliminated, and a new order will be established. But until then, according to the text, the struggle continues. Humanity is trapped between two forces: the will to evolve and grow, and the constant influence of everything that has been corrupted from the beginning. What the Book of Enoch is really saying, when you remove all the layer of angels and giants, is that there's a pattern of destructive behavior that was planted in humanity a long time ago, and that continues to repeat itself. The Watchers represent any authority or power that abuses its position. The giants represent consumption without limits and violence without purpose. Forbidden knowledge represents information used to manipulate instead of liberate. And the wandering spirits represent the traumas and patterns that do not die, that continue to affect each new generation. If you look at society today and ask yourself why it seems we are stuck in cycles of violence, greed, and self-destruction, the Book of Enoch offers an answer, because these forces were unleashed in the world a long time ago and were never completely eliminated. You can call this evil spirits, or you can call it social conditioning. It doesn't matter. The result is that most people live reacting to impulses they don't understand, chasing things they don't need, and feeling empty even when they get everything they wanted. The story of the giant in the Book of Enoch is a warning about what happens when power, knowledge, and desire meet without moral or ethical limits. The Watchers had power, used it to satisfy desire, gave knowledge without wisdom, and the result was total chaos. Today, governments have power, corporations have knowledge, and everyone has desire fed 24 hours a day by advertisements and social media. The chaos we see is just a modern version of the same old story. The difference is that today there is no flood coming to clean everything up. We have to find a way to deal with the internal giants we created, with the spirits of our own excesses that continue to haunt us, and with the knowledge we have but don't know how to use responsibly.